Open it up for questions. Senator Batters, followed by Senator Munson.
Thanks very much. Appreciate that, Senator Tannas. My question is pertaining to the item on the C-48 travel for the Transport Committee. And so this particular committee item deals with the C-48 anti-West Coast tanker bill. And when I see this, I'm really surprised to see that there's no travel being proposed to Alberta and Saskatchewan as part of this study, given the huge impact on Alberta and my home province of Saskatchewan of this bill for the oil industry, because the oil that comes, in large part from Alberta and Saskatchewan, that would be what would go into those tankers. And so I have personally heard major opposition to this bill from people in my province, and I'm wondering that when this matter was dealt with at Transport Committee, I don't know if you know this or if you could find this out for us, was this unanimously agreed to, or were there any senators from Alberta and Saskatchewan who voiced concern about that? If you can provide any guidance, that would be appreciated.
We had a visit about that at the subcommittee. The chair made it clear that it was not unanimous, that the trip involved only British Columbia, and that, in fact, there was quite a bit of discussion and ultimately a vote. I believe the vote was done in public about the question of an Alberta-Saskatchewan portion. And was not carried by the committee. They are the masters of their own business, and so we had no choice but to deal with what was in front of us.
You were speaking about the Transport Committee chair?
The Transport Committee chair, exactly.
Senator Tkachuk. Okay, thank you.
Senator Munson, Senator Dean, and Senator Plett.
Thank you, Chair. Full disclosure, I sit on the subcommittee which approved the two trips, which are very important. It is a third of the overall budget for next year. I'm just concerned for other committees. Do you feel that there's enough left over for other committees? There's equally other important issues in the country that are there, giving up a third of our budget.
I think a couple of things to consider. Last year, this one that is closing out right now, we had a $600,000 surplus that was not used by committees. So just using that and projecting that onto the same activities for the coming year, we can afford what is roughly an extra $600,000 worth of expenses. The other thing that we considered and discussed at the subcommittee was the fact that there's an election, and that will further shrink the timeframes for travel activities for senators. So we think we're probably okay for the coming fiscal year because of the election and the shortened work season for us, if you will. But this is now this will be the third time a committee has requested money to travel specifically on a study of legislation. And if this is something that committees are going to continue to do, then I think we need to look at and review the quantum that we've kind of used over the last number of years for committee budgets with the view to potentially expanding it. And if this is an important piece of the work that Senate committees do, is traveling the country, I think that would be a good discussion to have.
Thank you. Just a brief supplementary. On the other travel, transport, and communications, was there any indication that the committee in British Columbia would actually travel to Kitimat? They have Prince Rupert and Terrace, but Kitimat seems to be a strategic place to visit as part of that visit.
I agree. It's a 40-minute drive down a nice paved road, and it is about to become an important transportation center for LNG. So the subcommittee put that suggestion in the ears of the Transport Committee that maybe if they had a spare couple of hours, it would be worth it to take a run down there.
Thank you.
Senator Dean and then Senator Plett.
Well, this is going to sound rather obvious, but these costs strike me as high. They strike me as being excessively high. I'm hearing that this constitutes 1/3 of the entire committee budget. And I guess I'm going to ask the obvious questions. One, how much consideration was given to alternative means of reaching out? And we often talk about teleconferences and or scoping down more narrowly the breadth. And I'm thinking in particular about the Bill C-49 study. And I'd kind of be interested in the purpose of these committee studies, and by that I'm saying was it the view of the proponents of this breadth and expense of travel that this was about giving voice to people, or was it about learning something that we don't know already? So those are, I think, some of the questions that most Canadians would be asking, and I thought they should be asked at this meeting.
I think those are both good questions. With respect to the costs, and this is something that we have struggled with here, tried different methods to encourage budgeting that didn't always involve a 50% over budgeting. We've not been successful in that. There is a system that is used that ensures that there will never be a shortfall. That is the whole exercise, is that, God forbid we should make a mistake and under budget. So we wind up, it's I can't remember what we're asking for, $600,000 for the two studies combined. And we have every expectation that we will get at least $250,000 of that back, that it just won't be spent because it will have been over budgeted. But that is our reality. So when we look at these numbers, we've all been conditioned on internal, and those of us on the subcommittee, that we got to discount them by 40%. Secondly, with respect to the travel, we heard from the Transport Committee that they had tried, that the technology in the north makes it difficult, and that there were a number, like dozens of witnesses from that area that wanted to speak, and that trying to do it through video conference in that area was problematic. In fact, the chair mentioned that their very first video conference went down, and so given the amount of attention and the concentration in a specific geographic territory, they felt it was important to get out there and to talk to the Indigenous communities that are out there that are dispersed but could come to one of the two centers, Prince George or Terrace. With respect to C-69, we heard less from the committee, although we did. But the fact of the matter is, Senator, that this is, in many people's view, including my own as an Albertan, a potential bomb for this country and for the unity of this country. There are very few bills where hundreds of people hundreds of ordinary working people get in their trucks and drive to Ottawa to talk about quite spontaneously. And I think it's fair to say they represent the tip of a very, very large iceberg. And so I think we felt that given the stakes, it was important that the representatives of the regions, and that's who we are, and we have this is a regional issue, needed to go and hear and give voice to the people in both of those regions, in East Atlantic Canada, in Quebec, and in the West.
Okay. Senator Plett, Black, Foray, and Marshall.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few comments. I really don't know that I have a question for Senator Tannas, but a few comments. I am on Transport Committee, and I want to address Senator Batters' question. trust me, Senator Batters, there were those of us that tried hard and diligently to get this trip to Saskatchewan and Alberta. There are those of us that believe that the areas that are most impacted by any legislation should be visited. We shouldn't just sit here in Ottawa and tell everybody to come to us. You do not have a proper perspective of things unless you visit a site. We yesterday had some Indigenous folks at Transport Committee testifying, and one of them testified about a pipeline break on a pipeline that ran through his community, and how the community had rallied around together with Husky Oil to clean this up, and how good of a job they had done at cleaning this up, and they were strong opponents of the of C-48, and they had some excellent testimony as to how when there are disasters that happen, how people can rally. But when you just hear people here in Ottawa, or indeed even by teleconference or video conference, it's very difficult to get the true picture. And so many of us believe that the areas most impacted are indeed British Columbia, but most certainly Alberta and Saskatchewan are impacted because of economic development and so on and so forth. And we were met by opposition on every motion that we made, including the motions I made in this regard. And I'm disappointed about that. Nevertheless, the committee, and I do believe in the democratic process, and the committee voted against those motions and voted in favor of this trip. And so I think it's incumbent on us to approve what the committees are masters of their own destiny to a large extent, and we need to accept that vote. And I fully support these recommendations here. And just a little further to the budget, indeed they are always over budgeted. I've been involved for quite some years now, and I know for a fact that the transport trip, not all 12 senators are going. I know that because I won't be going. And so there will be savings there. I'm sure there are some others. I know that on the energy trip, there are senators that are not going for the entire trips, and there are people when they go to New Brunswick, some New Brunswick senators that are subbing, so that we can save some dollars there. So I think we do a lot of that. And so most certainly these costs will come down. And much as I was frustrated about what happened at transport, I do support these recommendations.
Senator Black.
Much. I'm here subbing for Senator Verner, and I'm very pleased to be here. I've never been to an internal economy meeting, so I'm pleased to be here. I think I'm going to keep it that way, Senator. There's a couple of things. First of all, Senator Tannas, thank you very much for your comments, specifically in respect of Senator Dean's very good questions. Senator Dean, there is no doubt that not only are the trips about giving voice, it is about hearing substantive material from folks who just can't get here for whatever reason. So I would identify with Senator Tannas' comments. Senator Batters has asked a very important question in respect of why, with respect, is the Transport Committee doing a half job? That's my question. That was my question at the time. I will be calling publicly today for the Transport Committee to reconsider their decision because I believe it's a half job. I mean, it is so important to go to Kitimat and Prince Rupert and Terrace. I completely get that. I've advocated for that. But the committee must hear from the folks in Fort Mac and in my respectful position in certain places in Saskatchewan. So we're talking likely 2 days. So I will be calling for that today because I think it's the wrong decision. I think it's going to be misinterpreted. So I just wanted to share that with this committee so people aren't surprised. But that's what I'm going to do because I think the committee has taken a decision that could be unhelpful long term. Thank you, Chair.
Senator Foray.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm also
on the budget subcommittee, we received these requests that are very substantial. We're talking about $500,000, and we did question whether the whole project had been really reviewed, whether they needed to go there. This is, though, only the second time since 1998 that a Senate committee has actually traveled to study legislation. I think that this is an issue that is being given a lot of public profile. People are very interested in this because there is a huge impact. We have to make legal decisions, but also fair ones. So if we allow travel for two bills that are very relevant trips, we're going to have to look carefully at the impact of this travel, because if we decide to say yes today for these two bills, when a number of other bills come up and committees want to travel, then we're going to have criteria so that we can make fair decisions, because this has a major impact on our budget. So basically, I agree. We questioned closely both committees. We talked about their communications plans, which they have, but we're also going to have to look at the impact of that on our budget, because if we decide to travel every time we study a bill, that would be ideal. But I think we have to find a balance. We have to manage the money properly and analyze as well.
Okay. Well, I've been on that subcommittee as a permanent member a number of years ago, and I did attend the meeting yesterday when we were considering these two proposals. We always budget for all the members of the committee to go, and I don't remember ever having all members attend these trips. So you'll probably come in with maybe a half of the senators attending these trips. So while the budget is high, I don't have a problem with it. But I did want to speak to Senator Dean's comment with regard to why we're doing this. The National Finance Committee, which rarely travels, actually it only traveled twice in my memory in the last 10 years. And we went across the country and had hearings on Minister Morneau's proposed tax changes to small businesses. And I found going across the country and hearing from business owners and meeting them and having tours of some small businesses, I found it really informative. It's fine to sit in our committee rooms and hear experts come in. But when you go out and listen to people, in these communities, you get a different perspective. So looking back, for national finance, that was several years ago now, that was a very worthwhile experience. We also visited Miramichi when we were studying the Phoenix system for one day, and that was a worthwhile experience. So I don't have a problem with, I know we have to be selective, but going on what we call on the road is very beneficial. Just want to assure you of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senators. That was a good perspective on issues, but I think we should move forward. It is moved by Senator Tannas that the report be adopted. Is it agreed to adopt the motion? Agreed? On division. Item 3, colleagues, the next